When I started talking to pastors and different people here in Katy, one of the first things that people told me is there used to be a sign that greeted you when you came into Katy that read, "Katy, a city of churches." For me, that's very uplifting, because what that communicates is that there were generations of believers, even before us, that had their sights set on reaching Katy for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And here's what I would think. A city that is full of churches that is doing that would be a different kind of city. A city where on Sunday not only was the gospel taught and preached and embraced, but a city where throughout the week the church is actually living out the gospel. But as we look around Katy, I mean, we see traces of stuff in Katy that's really no different than any other city in the nation, right? I mean, just think about the difficulties that we have in Katy. South side of Katy, there's a high teenage pregnancy rate. North side of Katy, they talk about the gangs that are really there and the drugs and how it's prevalent in our schools. And then, there's a dividing line that has hit Katy as well. And that dividing line is I-10. And somehow we think, that it's them and it's us. And there's some division there. So why is that? Why is Katy not really any different than any other city on the map? I mean, has the church failed? I would say absolutely not. The church has not failed. Rather, here's what I see in talking with people in this area, other pastors and so forth, that God is readying Katy for something amazing that is going to happen. And actually, we're already starting to see the fruits of what is going to happen in our midst. You see, about 15 years ago, around 1996, this guy named Jim Harrington and some other men got together and they wanted to start a prayer movement. And out of that prayer movement is really what turned into Mission Houston, and Mission Houston kind of was catalytic for pastors in the Houston area getting together and praying for the city of Houston. And they did a retreat, and all these pastors were together and praying, and it took about a couple of days. And finally there was a major breakthrough, and these men literally found themselves on the ground, face down, just weeping and crying out to God. And as a matter of fact, the Katy prayer room, the prayer movement that's been going on in Katy birthed from that. So for 15 years, pastors all around Houston have been praying that the city of Houston would be changed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the same here in Katy. Tim Keller, who's a pastor up in Manhattan, he kind of echoes what we believe. He says that really no movement of God happens if there's no prayer movement. So the encouraging thing to me is, not only in Houston but in Katy, there's been a major prayer movement that has been going on for over a decade. And so guys like myself, we get to come in and stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and have kind of readied this area for a movement of God that is about to happen. Since December, I've been privileged to meet with other pastors in the Katy area, and all of them sense that God is doing something amazing in our midst. And really, it all started back with those guys praying for the city of Katy. Unless you've lived the last few years in a cave, you've noticed that Katy's experienced some tremendous growth. I mean, try 90% growth in the last decade. So we're kind of old Katy, has around 19,000 people. Katy ISD services, if you will, about 300,000 people. Katy itself, in this last census that came out, it is said that Katy is the fastest growing city in the nation. It's called Medical Center West as well. Katy, around I-10 and the Beltway, it's said that it'll be the next center of Houston. It said about the next 8 to 9 years, Katy ISD will be educating some 87,000 students. Just to think about that number blows my mind. And y'all know, you know that there's new schools that are going up, and probably the next few years there will be even more schools that are going up. See, Katy ISD, they're already readying themselves to take care of the education of our kids. And so here's my question. How is the church preparing itself to take care of the salvation of our kids? I mean, how can the church make the gospel accessible to every man, woman, and child? Not just in these new growth areas, but in unreached populations that are already established. How can we make the gospel accessible to every man, woman, and child in those areas so that they have repeated opportunities to hear, understand, and respond to the gospel? For the past 8 years, I've been on staff at Clear Creek Community Church in League City. In the last 2 years, I've been transitioning out of my role as junior high pastor and into church planner. And one of the things that we've done at Clear Creek in League City is we've looked at a map and we've said, what would it look like if we were to own a geographical area where we said we're going to reach this area, that within a set number of years, anyone that you come in contact with will say, I've been to a Clear Creek campus, or I know someone who has. Well, since we have thought about coming and planting Cross Community Church here in Katy, we've been asking the same question. What would it look like to own a geographical area, to make sure that every man, woman, and child in that geographical area has those repeated opportunities to hear, to experience, touch, taste, understand, and respond to the gospel? Now, obviously, as we're starting off, that circle is not going to be very big. But eventually, what would it look like to reach Katy? I think as our church grows and as we start to expand, that circle begins to grow, and we start looking at Katy as a whole. I think as we do, two questions begin to surface. Why would we even want to do that, and how? We live right by Houston, one of the largest cities in the United States, and therefore a very large city by the world standards as well. In evangelical circles, there's this kind of a whisper amongst them where they look at Houston and they say, you know, there's something different about Houston. If we can reach Houston with the gospel, then we can somehow set a model that could correlate to how we can reach the other cities of the world. See, 85% of the world's population lives in cities. So do you see the correlation? If somehow we could reach Houston, then we could reach other cities. So here's my thought. What if we could own the geographical area Katy, and that thing would just kind of grow and grow and grow to where you have a major suburb by Houston. And if we can win Katy, if we can work with other churches to really win Katy, then what kind of impact would that have on Houston? So say we can help, make the gospel infiltrated into Katy. It impacts Houston. It impacts Houston. It can change Houston. It changes Houston. It could potentially change the world. I don't think that Katy needs another church. They really don't need another, church planter from a mega church coming in thinking that they have all the answers, and I know I don't. But here's what I do know. I do know that we could come in and we could plant a movement. A movement where people who are far from God are led back home to the Father. A movement that actually begins to change people, that changes homes, that changes marriages, that helps change neighborhoods, that can change a community, that changes schools. A movement of multiplication so that we're creating disciples who turn into leaders, who reproduce themselves as leaders, that maybe even reproduce the church, and we can reach different pockets of populations within the Katy area. A movement that takes the gospel serious, a movement that actually believes that we can offer a better life through Jesus Christ. Join us and find your place in being a part of a movement that has been prayed about for literally over a decade. A movement that will create a new sign for Katy. Katy, a city of churches bringing about gospel transformation. Come be a part of something new, really something timeless, something that's now. Come and be a part of Cross Community Church of Katy.